Well, it sounds like we could see a new named storm in the Gulf of Mexico here early this week. Does that bring any rainfall potential to parts of the U.S. mainland? Also, did we see any frost here this past weekend with the cold temperatures in many parts of the country? We're going to talk about all that and more as we take a look at weather. Joining us now, Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. And Eric, good to talk with you again this week. Let's start with a recap of this past week, which was very cool in many areas. And I know we touched on that. Could there be some frost risk potential? So, what did we find? Did we get down cold enough for some frost in some parts of the country?
We did, but I don't necessarily think it hit a lot of main growing areas. But we saw northern parts of Minnesota, parts of northern Wisconsin, even some sections of central Wisconsin got down there with those temperatures pretty chilly over the weekend. And even this morning in the Appalachian Mountains, there's frost advisories for parts of West Virginia and Virginia, but that's pretty high up in elevation. I did get a text a few minutes ago from a friend, former colleague that worked down or farms down in southern Illinois, southeastern Illinois. He says he got down to 38 and he was concerned that there may have been a couple of areas that got hit. So when I look at the data from the weather stations, I don't see a lot of frost, but remember they're spaced pretty far out, meaning in between you could have these areas that touched it. But overall, I don't think it was a widespread event, which is good. Now, that's out. Temperatures are already rebounding in a big way. And you brought it up a moment ago. The big thing I'm worried about this week is right now, when you and I are recording this early on Monday morning, it's called Tropical Depression 6. But I think by the time you get to this afternoon or this evening, we'll be talking about Tropical Storm Francine. Now, in the tropics, we are still, I don't know, 5-7 days away from the actual peak of the hurricane season, meaning the whole second half is still to go. But a couple of things are changing. The lids come off the atmosphere across the Atlantic, and no longer the upper level suppression. We're still dealing with some of the lingering issues of it being too warm in the upper atmosphere to really support big tropical systems. But you and I have talked a lot about the Gulf of Mexico being a breeding ground this year. And we have this kind of perfect timing between this Tropical Depression 6, soon to be named Francine, kind of coming to the north just as a great big trough of low pressure is developing in the Northwest United States. So while we were so cold this weekend, the Northwest just had its hottest first weekend in September on record. So you look back 132 years at that weekend specifically, hottest. And in addition to that, major wildfire smoke in the Northwest, which actually spread through the Midwest as well. Okay, big story. Let's pull this all together. That deep trough that's coming into the Northwest soon is going to knock out all of that heat. It's going to push it to the upper Midwest. It's going to push it to the Dakotas. When the trough dives into the Northwest, it's actually going to give us a wind in the upper levels that's going to come out of the Southwest, grabbing what will be named Francine and taking it right up the Mississippi River. I mean, I think the forecast track could be along the Mississippi River almost exactly. And I checked this morning, the Mississippi River is 7 feet below low stage at Memphis. We've got pockets around the Delta getting up to the Ohio Valley that have been extremely dry for the last 35 or 40 days. I'm talking about Western Kentucky, Tennessee, parts of Arkansas, Northern Mississippi, Southern Indiana, Southern Illinois that really need this, especially for those areas that double crop a soybean on top of their wheat. They really need to get this rain in on that soybean crop. But yeah, how strong is it going to be? I'm not yet settled. I mean, some of the model forecasts range from Cat 1 to Cat 3. It's probably going to be somewhere in there. We just don't know yet. It's not yet formed fully. But I will say the flooding in Mississippi will be, I think, pretty rough. There's the forecast for an extra maybe over 10 inches of rain out of this. And remember, for the last 2 weeks, parts of Louisiana just saw 10 to 15 inches of rain. So, I mean, Jesse, we may look over this month, this 30-day window, and see that Louisiana gets 30 inches of rain, parts of Louisiana, this is the coast. And for perspective, that would be 75% of the annual rainfall in Champaign, Illinois, where I live. So those are the big pieces that are moving through right now. And a lot of warmth is going to spread into the Midwest as this all takes shape. So no frost threat after this, but certainly it's going to be, where is that rain going to go? And I'll say this, most of the Corn Belt is drier. It's just that part right through the Delta into the Mid-South, into the Ohio Valley that I think has the best chances. So you brought up one simple topic. I turned it into a 5-minute discussion, but that's what I'm
Well, and I think about this too, just the simple fact that with the water levels on the Mississippi the way they are, this could be huge to help us out here as we enter into fall harvest season and a key logistical time frame here for U.S. growers, Eric.
It is, but at the same time, it's interesting because I mean, there are some guys. I was just texting a guy in Mississippi. He's like, "I got 8,000 acres. I'm trying to get harvested. How much time do I
Yeah.
have?" I'm like, "You don't have enough time unless you own like 50 combines." Then yeah. But it's it's going to be ill time for some folks. From a meteorological perspective, from a hydrologic perspective, I want it. I mean, I don't want drought anywhere. I hate drought, hate when it builds in. It's a it's such a strain, especially when it's local
Mhm.
on farmers. When maybe the rest of the country isn't in it, but you are, you don't get the price reflection. You just have to deal with the drop in yields. So we've got, gosh, a huge chunk of our cotton belt that's in drought right now, and a
Mhm.
lot of that's along the Mississippi River. But we needed this rain in mid-August, not at the beginning of September. So, just thinking it through, net benefit, but overall, some folks are going to be chased out of fields because of this.
Now, as we think about fall in front of us here and South America as well, I know that's a big talking point right now. Give us some of the latest thoughts you have with how dry things are in parts of South America, Eric.
Yeah, well, if we kind of do both North and South America, with your comment on our fall, their spring, the driving factor is going to be, La Nina. We're finally there. I mean, it's the ocean temperatures are negative zero point 0.6. That's past that negative zero point 0.5 threshold. The trade winds are stronger. We're getting to see more of a La Nina like behavior. So, what that means for North America before we get to South America is the fact that the whole southern tier of the US, I mean, just cut the United States in half, running north to south, just cut it in half. We will likely be drier into fall. Now, could be a tropical system that throws that all off, but where is it wet first? It's wet in the northwest. But your question was more about South America. And in South America, we know that this past weekend we watched more massive wildfire smoke spread throughout much of Brazil, down into Paraguay, Uruguay, even into Argentina. They're still in the dry season. And I'm just going to say this, Matt Bennett and I were talking about this over the weekend. September, I don't mean to, I'm just going to say it. September doesn't matter. October matters. 80% of the crop is planted in October, and they're waiting on rain. So we don't need to worry about the fact there is not rain across much of Brazil's Cerrado. Now, where is it raining? It's raining in southern Brazil and raining in Paraguay, Uruguay, and parts of northern Argentina. If the rains, which are currently being forecast, aided along by this developing La Nina, begin to start to hit parts of central Brazil by the first week of October, then they're going to have a very fast plant. And the European model's been pretty consistent with bringing that in for a while now. And it's most important thing for our markets right now in terms of foreign weather, just the speed at which the monsoon arrives and the pace of planting. So October's the critical month. Normally by the beginning of October, they've got less than 10% of the crop planted. I'm talking about soybeans. And by the end of it, they have 85 to 90% planted if they're moving quickly. So October rains are key. And right now we're seeing wetter conditions in October for most of Brazil.
All right. So we wrap up this week, Eric. Any final thoughts you would mention about the weather? Anything else you're watching or you want to reiterate to folks today?
Yeah, I would just say this. Um, the way this pattern is shaped up this fall, it's unblocked and it's moving, and it might stay that way for a while. When we get into winter, if La Nina does in fact take a grip of the pattern, the Ohio Valley, there's not much drought risk for winter there. The Northwest, not much drought risk. I'm just concerned about the whole southern tier of the US, especially the Cotton Belt, having some winter drought development if that's the case. But for a lot of us, if La Nina comes in with a little bit of strength, we might have a real winter. I mean, like when I just say real, like back to normal, because we didn't have one last year. So, a little bit of excitement in my voice because things are happening and it makes my job easier when there's something going on to talk about. But I think I'll be watching those things most carefully. And I think La Nina's influence is going to be critical going forward.
All right. Folks, you can check out agweather.com, ag-wx.com. Sign up for Eric's weekly weather newsletter as well. Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Thanks for joining us again this week, sir. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, sounds good, Jesse. Thanks.